All right, welcome everybody. Men lie, women lie, but stats don't lie. We're here for a special episode. I've got my buddy Noxville here, and we're going to talk about Shanghai Compendium predictions. How you doing, Nox?
Yeah, pretty tired. 3 a.m. Classic South African American time zone clash, but whatever.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Sorry about that, dude. My daughter's been a little sick the last couple of days, so we had to find time to fit this in somehow. So
Yeah.
right now you are looking at the hero predictions page. There are 4 predictions pages in the Shanghai Major Compendium, each with 10 categories. Knoxville and I are going to walk you through all 40 of our predictions. We're going to talk to you a little bit about the methodology that we used in some cases because we have run some simulations of the entire tournament to get an idea of, for example, how many heroes are going to be picked. And we're going to try to give you kind of our range of reasonable choices for most of these picks. If you just want the picks, guys, I am going to link a set of screenshots in the video description. One with my picks and one with Knox's picks, and we'll also link you some of the data and the numbers that we're using in the overall tournament, which includes simulated win probabilities for each team. So all of those are going to be right below in the video comments if you want to read those. But if you want to hear our thoughts on the various predictions, stay tuned. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the hero prediction. I think we both agree on the most picked hero. This is kind of a layup for Vengeful Spirit. In most of the simulations that we were running, it came down to Vengeful Spirit and Invoker, and Ice Frog, in his infinite wisdom, has seen fit to nerf the shit out of Invoker, so I think it's definitely going to be Venge.
Yep. Gyrocopter may be an alternative, but I think Venge is like quite clearly the odds-on favorite here.
Yeah, I'm going to go in terms of most banned and highest win rate. I'm going to go with Earth Spirit in both of those categories. I'm much more confident in most banned. I think that's going to be either Earth Spirit or Io almost for sure. Highest win rate, I think, is a little bit of a crapshoot. There are a number of heroes I think you could pick there. I'm going to go with Earth Spirit. What do you think are the other big favorites for win rate, Ben?
Chen is definitely one. It's got like the highest elo rates, win rate, gain rates this patch. You got 2 options here. Either you go with a hero which is like statistically very good, or a hero which only very good teams are going to play once or twice here and beats lesser teams.
Right.
So if you go for the first option, you're going for Chen, you're going for Earth Spirits, if you think it's going to be picked enough. If you're going for the second option, then you're going for maybe a signature hero from eHome or Alliance, maybe like a Lone Druid. One could say an Nature's Prophet, but some of the other teams have been playing it as well. So I'm going to go with Lone Druid here.
Is my other pick there. I'm kind of tempted actually to change that because I think you brought up a good point in some of the discussion that we were having before recording here, that Earth Spirit, especially with Invoker being nerfed so badly, Earth Spirit's going to get banned a lot more than he had. But I still kind of think after what we've seen at MDL, and Jerax wasn't even there, I think Earth Spirit is the play here. So kill average.
Yeah, I think that Earth Spirit. Just one second. I think Earth Spirit's like a very important talking point here because it might affect some of the other predictions. But it's a hero where every single team saw the potential that it had going into MDL and at MDL. And since then, every other team has now either started training an Earth Spirit player, like EG, got Fear to start playing it.
No, EG, Fear's been training Earth Spirit for some time. Like
But
that's been a long time.
I don't know if you saw it. Like his first stream after he got back was just like Earth Spirit grind.
Sure.
But every team's either got like a dedicated player for it now, or I think most teams are just going to ban it and just be done with that hero.
Fair enough.
Very, very strong. Not really affected by the Ags nerf, so whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. I just don't think there's. I don't necessarily think that there's one hero that's screaming for me to take them over Earth Spirit is the big problem there. I agree with all. This is a very difficult category. I agree with all you said, but I don't necessarily think that there's one hero that I would definitely take. Maybe Lone Druid is the only one that I'd go for. Kill average. I have Outward Devourer on my screen right now. I think that this is another one where you could go in several directions. Highest kill average and most kills in a game. I'm pretty tempted I'm vacillating back and forth between OD and Tiny for both of those. Ursa is a possibility for most kills in a game, but the general comment that I'll make is a number of these questions that we're talking about with the averages absolutely require that you have 5 or more games played, and I'm very reluctant to pick a hero in those categories that I'm not confident is going to have 5 appearances. And so I'm a little bit gun shy on Ursa with the kill average question.
Yeah, you rather be sure in the first case that it's going to get more than 5 games, and then in the second case which one it's going to be, then the other way around.
Right.
Ursa, I don't know. Our model suggested that it's going to get picked 6 times, but that's a little bit too close for comfort. It did average like 9.6 kills a game this patch, which is really, really high.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be picked enough. I had the list as Ursa, Clinks, and Queen of Pain. I
think you have to add Spectre to that, because again, the potential. If you look at the heroes with 100 or more appearances, it's Queen of Pain and Spectre are both up there, as well as the heroes that we've talked about. I'm just going to go. I mean, if you look at pubs right now, though, OD has like 10 kills. He has the highest kills per match in every bracket except sub 2K. Like, I just think I think this tournament is going to be the oops, Ice Frog nerfed the wrong hero in 6.86F, but we'll see. Highest assist average, I think you go with Zeus, Spectre, or Earth Spirit. Probably Zeus or Earth Spirit would be my 2 highest picks, but I'm going to go with Zeus. Zeus is, I think, 13 assists per game average in this patch, and we were talking about this before we recorded, that you just kind of get assists for free with his ulti.
Yeah. Well, not just the ulti, like also the aura. Yeah. Like if you're in a team fight and you cast one spell, Static Field just goes to work. Right. And we expect to see him at least 12 times according to the model. So yeah, perhaps we should like loop back on how we did that model, because
that's true.
Maybe
that's
after
true.
this.
So I was going to talk about I was going to talk about that a little bit later when we got into our tournament predictions, but that's going to be close to the end of the video. So we might turn around and talk about that a little bit earlier. But for now, let's finish off this page. Morphling, which for whatever reason, the hero with the highest win rate and the hero with the lowest death average are the 2 most valuable points-wise questions on this page. I'm going to pick Morphling, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on the players page. I think, like, Sylar, if you look at both in this patch and career, like, he just doesn't die. He has the highest KDA in land matches by far, and he plays a lot of Morphling. I think Morphling is hugely OP in this patch, and I think that's kind of a safe choice there. Obviously, the other split pushing carries, you could take a Terror Blade there, but again, it's minimum 5 games plays, which worries me.
Lone Druid also second lowest average deaths per game.
I really shy away from any hero. I think Lone Druid is going to get run by certain teams, not just Alliance in the off lane. And one of my big things going into this tournament, I think teams are going to spend a lot more resources punishing Lone Druid off lanes.
Yeah, there was a time in Dota 2 where you had to like very, very specifically practice against it, and I think a lot of the teams have dusted off their old playbooks to reinvest time in that.
So, a lot of the farming categories. So last hit, GPM, and most last hits in the game. I'm going to go with Anti-Mage there, as much because if you look at the farming stats in terms of the averages in 686, it's Anti-Mage in these categories among heroes with lots of appearances, and it isn't even close. And the other thing is I think you actually have a lot of the top AM players in the world in this tournament. I think when you talk about CTY, you talk about Matumbaman, you talk about obviously your Sylars, Arteezy will play some AM. I just think you have a lot of the top farming AM players.
Yeah, Miracle also very very good.
For sure. Oh god, 8K baby. I guess you could say that of Arteezy now too. And most kills in a game. Again, we talked about this. I'll go with Tiny. Let's go with teams. And for some of our teams, let's actually circle back a little bit and talk about how we did some of these simulations, because I don't have it on my screen right now, but one of the things that you can find below in the notes for this video is our simulations for group win probabilities and overall tournament finishing place probabilities for each of these teams. And one of the things that really struck me, if you look at these simulations, is that eHome just stands out as the favorite going into this tournament. And I mean, I said at the end of my in my MDL recap video that I thought if Shanghai started the day after MDL that eHome would be prohibitive favorites. I do think that other teams are going to have gotten better going into this tournament, but I think statistically, if you believe in what we've seen on paper at all, you have to call eHome the favorites here.
Yeah, definitely. The problem is just that they have such a good win record against the other top teams.
Right.
Like there's no team I think other than LGD who's 2-1 against them this year. There's like no other team that's got like a decent win record against them.
Right.
So it's pretty much a situation of them getting to the top and having high elo and high win record against the other top teams. So.
Right. Now, I went into that a little bit in the last Stats Don't Lie, where we talked about sort of overall handicapping the field, where I felt like I looked at records only against the top 7 teams, my Super 7 teams, and I said I felt like eHome was really unique in that they've dominated against both types of competition. They've dominated against teams outside the top 7. They've dominated within the top 7. The rest of these are kind of a crapshoot, and I wanted to mention with a lot of these questions, when you talk about averages versus most X in a game, the most X in a game are much, much, much more difficult to predict. And so honestly, whenever we're talking about these player, hero, or team with most kills, most highest GPM or whatnot in a game, like if you want to pick your favorite hero or player or team, go for it. It's really when we're talking about the average categories that I feel like the stats are very, very meaningful, and you should definitely use some of our predictions. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think that there's also a couple of nuances with that. Like the stats from like this patch might not be very suggestive about what the maximum length of the game would be or the minimum length would be. So a lot of what we've done is look back at similar tournaments like Frankfurt, maybe some of the TIs, and you look to see similar length tournaments, similar format. Like what are we seen as the mins and the maxes, and how has it changed since then? So that might be a better guide than just saying, oh, well, what's the longest game that we've seen so far this patch? Okay,
right.
87 minutes or something, pick. There's no reason to do that.
So that was sort of my lengthy introduction into saying, when I say team with the most kills in a game, I've picked Liquid here. They've had some very kill-heavy games in this patch. They've played a few long games in this patch. I honestly think you could probably pick you could pick any of the top 8 teams in the field, and they'd be at least reasonable for most kills in a game. When you talk about highest kill average, I really do feel like that's eHome all day, every day. Yeah,
so Fnatic actually has averaged a higher kill average this patch, but they're playing in a region which is substantially more easy.
And so I also talked about this in the last video, that Fnatic and MVP, for example, their average kills are a little bit misleading, because if you look at MVP, for example, averages 39 kills per match in wins and 14 and a half kills per match in losses. It's like, it's a ridiculous split, and I think those two teams are going to struggle overall, so I think those are poor choices there. Fewest deaths, again, I'm going to ride Sylar for a lot of these picks. You'll see that in the next slide. And I think LGD, I believe, they have a 0-death game in this patch, and I believe they have a couple of 2-death games as well. EG has a single 1-death game, I believe, and there are a couple other teams, but I don't think there are any teams at Shanghai that are in that fewest death totals for 6.86 as much as LGD is.
Yeah, I was actually going to go with EG myself, but I think LGD, just because of their group stage. Like, Group D is the hardest group, I think most people would agree.
No,
and
that's
Group C,
something we haven't talked about yet either, too. That's a good point.
And Group C is OG, LGD, Newbie, and Archon, and I think Archon is like a substantially weaker team than Complexity. I mean, that might be completely wrong, but
no, I share that. I mean, and not to rag on Archon at all, but I would share in terms of their power ranking coming in. A lot of the NA teams are hurt by the fact that they just tend to always be new rosters, and when you look at a LAN like this, cohesion is important. Even when you talk about a new team like OG at Frankfurt, that's not really a new team. There's a lot of pre-existing relationships and cohesion among those players. So most assists in a game and longest game and average game length, I went with newbie in all those categories. And it's because if you look at, again, you brought up group composition in affecting these picks in talking about the previous point. And I think that's really where I'm going with these newbie picks on this page. Newbie just, they're in a group where 3 out of the 4 teams just love to take it long. Archon has, I believe, the longest or second longest average match time in the patch. They're over 42 minutes. Newbie is almost as long. They're like 41 minutes. And the reason that I like newbie in a lot of these categories is because they run a strategy like I talked about in the previous video where they're very aggressive early on. They get a lot of kills. They use a ton of smokes, but they take that lead and they're almost like the previous iteration of C9 that in games that they're ahead, they're not even looking to finish fast. They're looking more to consolidate their lead and play conservatively.
Yeah, so I went for slightly different. I went for most assists in a game alliance, and yeah, I think that newbie was also like a reasonable choice there based on previous statistics. They just seem to always have 3-man ganks. It's like always 3, so you always get 3 assists. But longest game winner, Secrets, and the highest game length average was Beachy Gaming.
Yeah,
I think the reason
I think the reason I put that is that Secret for sure.
Yeah, Secret is like very high in all of these regards, but I think that Beachy is very high because their game against Alliance is going to be like their group is just actually a group where I can imagine all of the teams dragging it to late. Alliance, Vici, T-Spirits, and Fnatic all, I think, can take it very late. And Alliance is a team that's historically been a very composed team. Like, when they're ahead, they don't rush forward and try to win the game straight away. They like to sit on their lead and extend their lead before they push high ground. And that generally leads to a longer game time compared to someone like VP, who just, you know...
I mean, I think Team Spirit, by the way, people talk about CIS teams playing very quick games, but Team Spirit and Vega are actually 2 teams that show up in this patch in some of the longer matches. I still to me, this is a lot about group composition, where when you look at Group C, I have this on my other screen here, I think that group, with the exception of Archon, is actually quite evenly matched. You've got LGD, Newbie, and OG that are all pretty good teams, legitimate threats to make a deep run. And when I look at Group B, I see Alliance and Vici Gaming, and I'm not convinced that either Fnatic or Spirit can take a game off either of the other 2 teams.
Well, that's the thing is, like, remember that from what the model suggests, teams are going to be playing from around 9 to 16 games, probably, between them.
Right.
And that means that if you have one series in your group, which is very easy, like you win 15, 20 minutes times 2, that is like 12.5% of all of your matches as the winner that you've just crashed. You've just dropped the average by 5 minutes.
No, and that's, for example, why I've got Archon as picking the least different heroes, right? Because it's very possible that in this entire tournament, Archon will only play 5 to 6 games.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, that's probably right. But that also means that you probably shouldn't be picking someone from Group A or C for highest average game length. Like, Secret is just an exception to this because of MVP Phoenix being like so extensively like known for dragging out games. I mean, no one wants to go home. No one wants to. No,
I think that was a point that that was the reason that I like newbie in these categories, is that you've got to look at teams. You've got to look at teams that draw games even when they're winning, and Secret also fits that. Secret also fits that mold, right? Which is why I liked you sort of suggesting that as a direction for our viewers, because I think Secret wins the longest game. Highest average game length is something that Secret could easily do really badly at the tournament, but still have a really high average game length because they just happen to take all their matches late and lose.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, by the way, so when we're talking about all this, I don't know if we were explicit enough about this, but what we're doing, right, is we're basically Monte Carloing a lot of these predictions. Okay, we're basically Noxville. For those of you who don't know, and if you watch my videos, you should. Noxville maintains a website where he has power rankings of all these various teams, Elo, Glico, and a couple others. And basically, what we're doing is we're using those power rankings to get pairwise win probabilities. So for each pair of teams, probability team A gets team B, and we're just playing the tournament. We're simulating the tournament on a computer hundreds and thousands of times, and we're looking at what happens in all of those different tournament runs, vis-a-vis the drafts, game lengths, all of that. Fair explanation.
Yeah, so the simulation runs 1,000,000 times, but the draft simulation only happens 10,000 times because of speed.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's still to me, like, we're not gonna go through the mathematics of Monte Carlo error bounds here, but still more than enough idea, I think, to get a good measure. And we'll talk a little bit more about those kinds of runs later when we do the tournament predictions. All right, well, let's move on to players. I think this one is a little bit.
This is your category.
Yeah, this is kind of my category. It's a little less technical, and I think most of these I'm going by feel because I don't necessarily feel like the simulations are fully indicative, even in an ideal world, of how these teams play. Highest kill average, I have to go with CTY because I think eHome is going to be, eHome is a team that even if something goes wrong with them in one of the playoff bracket matches and they bow out of the tournament earlier than expected, you've seen this in a couple of the recent lands. Like, you've seen this at Starlighter 13 with LGD and Liquid. Like, even though they bowed out, they ran into Alliance, like red hot teams in the bracket phase. They looked like dominant teams in the group phase. And I think eHome is gonna, if they lose, they're gonna look like a dominant team and then lose in a huge upset. So I think you got to go with CTY for highest kill average. Again, most kills in a game, I'm gonna go with Matumbamin mostly because he has a lot of the highest kill totals in the patch. I like him as a player. I like Liquid as a team, even though I think their ceiling isn't necessarily high enough for them to win the tournament outright, but I think that they're going to definitely finish top 8. Siler lowest death average is arguably, of all of these, one I'm more confident about. It's like one of the 4 or 5 of all these picks that I'm most confident in. Highest assist average, again, I'm going to go with Kaka because I think eHome is going to do very well, and I think he's going to play a ton of games on an Earth Spirit, for example, heroes that rack up the assists. Again, think about players that play Earth Spirit, Zeus, support, right? Those are the ones you're going to want to take in this category. Most assists in a game, again, something we've talked about earlier. When you're talking about highest average assists, I think you pick a player that plays the right heroes on a very good team. When you're talking about most assists in a game, pick your favorite player. And I think when you talk about most assists and most different heroes, you got to go with Fear. And I think that there are any number of players that you could go with as alternatives there. Most assists in a game, you could obviously go with Jerax. You could obviously go in any number of directions.
Bulldog? Nature's Prophet?
Probably, although Bulldog has been playing a more aggressive Prophet. I think that's a decent pick there as well. I would not go with him in terms of the average ratings because he plays too many games where he just dedicated rats. But again, most assists in the game, hey, pick your favorite player, man. That's fine. Highest GPM average, again, I got to go with CTY just because of how strong I think eHome looks, and they're really consistently going to farm him. I would go with CTY or Siler in these categories just because I think EG is going to have some games where RTZ puts up these eye-popping farm totals. I think EG is also going to have some games where Artur is playing heroes that are looking to mix it up a little bit more, and his numbers, even if they win, are a little bit lower. So I think eHome and LGD are two teams that they're always going to have their carries on pretty hard farming heroes, and they're always going to be putting up good numbers. highest GPM in the game. Again, hey, pick Artur if you want to. I'm going to go with Sylar again, but I think that could be any one of 8 or 9 different players. I think for most last hits in a game, you want to pick a hero. You want to pick a player on a team that you think is going to play some really long matches. I was tempted to go with Howe in this category, but Spectre is really the only hero that is going to, in his pool, that I think is going to necessarily set this record. So I'm going to go with EE just because I think he plays. I think you're going to see probably an EE Ember at one point. You're going to see it. You might see a Naga. You could see an Anti-Mage. I just think he has so many heroes in his pool that if Secret plays at least a couple of these 60 or 70-minute games, that they're just gonna put up huge last hit totals. And again, all of these farming, like all of these sort of average farming categories, I think Sylar is a very good choice just because he just doesn't die. And when you look at farming totals, that's very, very important in making your choices. All right, any overall comments on this one, Nox?
Yeah, I think burning is just maybe for some of them is like comparable for the farming ones. Everything else.
The thing is,
seems good.
burning dies though. That's been the issue.
Yeah.
And
but for last hit average, for example, or last hits in a game, he might be a little bit better.
Okay.
Silo's a safer player, like definitely correct. And for GPM, maybe that is very important. But burning has made some very, very impressive statistics so far, like
absolutely.
in his career.
Absolutely.
Who did you say? Sorry, last second for player that picks the most different heroes.
I was just I went with Fear there, kind of on a flyer. Even though I'm a little bit concerned about that going into this particular tournament because his their recent picks from him have been fairly heavily tilted toward Earth Spirit and even Enigma. But
I think you have to go for either like a versatile 4.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
He makes most sense, or someone who plays a lot of mid and safe lane carry. In which case, Arteezy, like playing 2 different positions very commonly.
I thought about that, but I've like they've picked Lone Druid for him like every freaking game lately.
Yeah.
I was a little scared off by that. I think I agree. I think Crit's a decent choice there too. But like Jack,
you might just pick him Rubik every game.
Yeah, exactly. That was okay. Never mind. Scratch that because that was my. I did think about Crit or Jerax, 2 4 position players that I just love their games. But yeah, that's the problem is that they're so concentrated in your Earth Spirits and your Tusks, right? Like the other thing, by the way, heroes. The other obvious thing that we haven't said in that category is when you're talking about most different heroes, you've got to talk about a player on a team that you think is going to make it deep into the tournament.
Yeah. It's got to be someone.
The issue is that apart from EG, when I look at the other 4 position players in teams that I think are going to make it fairly deep into the tournament, OG, eHome, Liquid, Alliance, all of those teams feature 4 position players that have fairly concentrated hero pools.
You could also be wild and go for Lanham. There was like a lot of tournaments where he's just played like a different hero every game type of thing.
That's true, like the wild card Abaddon pick. Okay, no, that's not a bad pick there as well. I could think about that. All right, and so the tournament picks are mostly you, so go for it. I'll interject, obviously, like anybody could stop me going along. I'll interject as we go, but you've run the numbers on a lot of these. Yeah.
So, I mean, most of these are just like the output of the simulation. Total number of games played, the simulation came up with 99.5 games, so we'll go with 98 to 102. It could be either side here. There's no specifically good or specifically bad in that. Total number of heroes picked, 88.5. So the 81 to 90 seems pretty fun. I don't know if we're going to get more than 90 heroes. Normally for tournaments, so the drafting is based off of all the 686 drafting, and normally when you come into a tournament, teams are prepared specifically for specific meta, so they're actually more conservative in how they draft. So veering on the fact that this is 88.5, being on the upper end of 81 to 90 isn't concerning because people are generally more conservative. Similarly with total number of heroes banned, the simulation went with 75.5, so 71 to 80 Um, when it came to most combined total kills in a game, this was pretty close. 71 to 80 or 81 to 90. This is something that we actually like spoke about a little bit.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I went for 71 to 80 because that's just in the last 2 months of Dota we've seen fewer kills per game, even though the game length has stayed mostly the same. So I went with 71 to 80 and you went with 81 to 90. At Frankfurt there was one game which had more than 80 kills.
Right.
And
right.
the rest were less.
Yeah,
78.
I think you're going to see. The other issue is at Frankfurt, there really was. I believe there was only like one game over 80 minutes. Let me see.
Yeah.
I think I have that on my screen over here. But there were not a lot of very long matches at Frankfurt. I actually think you're going to see.
It was newbie VP.
Yeah,
81.
newbie VP, right? And then the others
the
were
second
all...
longest. Yeah, the second longest was EG Secret, which was like 68 minutes.
Right. So okay. So that's kind of what I was going to say here is I think with the teams in this field that you're going to see a couple more. You're going to see a lot more matches go. Not a lot, but you're going to see like I don't know,
like 3 or 4
or 5 matches go to 70 minutes. Right. So I'm going to go. Yeah. I'm going to go a little bit higher here because I think once you see that you're going to have 4 or 5 matches that get past that 65-minute or so mark.
Yeah.
Anything can
One
happen.
of them might just peak over.
Right.
I agree. I think that the game length is going to get longer, but like I said, I think that the kills are going to stay down. I think there will definitely be like a couple of long games, but it'll be like, let's go farm for a bit. Okay, we got another item. Let's go fight.
Fair enough.
It won't just be like Virtus Pro versus Virtus Pro.
Shortest game, though, I think we both agree on, and I think is fairly straightforward. Like, there were only 2 games at Frankfurt that were less than 20 minutes, and they were 18 and 19. So I think 15 to 20 is the play here all day.
Yeah, and the groups are a little bit more reasonable, I think.
Agree.
Like the only thing that could happen here is like there's an outdraft in one game and one team loses all 3 lanes and they call GG. Like,
right.
I don't know if I think it's not even 50-50. It's more like 80-20. Like it could happen, but I think it's safer to just go 15-20.
No, I think 15 to 20 is much safer. Kills in a game, I think the record at Frankfurt was 20 by EE on Ember Spirit. I'm going to go 20 to 22 here.
Yeah, it's same. 100%.
Okay.
Most deaths 15 to 17?
Yeah, 50, I think 15 happened
twice or 3 times.
2 or 3 times at Frankfurt. Actually, no, wait. 15 happened 4 times at Frankfurt. And it was all one of them was Moon. I remember flaming him about that later. But
was he Earthshaker? Was it that Earthshaker game?
I think it might have been the one stink bomb of a Slarar match he played. But then he played like a couple that were ridiculous on that hero. So I love Moon anyway. But 15 to 17 I think is the play here. I could see it being 14, but I feel pretty good about that pick. Assists, 30 was the record at Frankfurt. I believe it was Ice, and Banana. And that happened twice. So I'm going to go 28 to 31.
I went 28 to 30. Yeah. See, the thing with most deaths in a single hero, like if you think that the games are going to be a little bit longer, then it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive in like these type of statistics. Yeah. So like, maybe even most kills by a single hero could be more. Could be like 24.
So the most deaths things, what scares me about that is actually Venge, because we are going to see a metric crap ton of Vengeful Spirit picks in this tournament. I think she's going to be the most picked hero, and it's not going to be close. And she's a kind of, just because of the nature of the hero and the way that she scales now with the Ags upgrade, like, you can die on that hero and you're fine. So I think there could easily be a Vengeful Spirit game in this tournament where the Vengeful Spirit ends up with like 18 deaths and her team wins.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's not start handing out Milk Awards anytime soon. But
all right, fair enough. All right,
I think it's just like in a really, really long game, heroes can die a lot and it's fine. Like even cores can die a lot. It's not a problem.
Yeah, you're safe, Jacob.
Okay,
you can continue dressing like a lumberjack. Highest GPM, I went with 900 to 999. This is a tough category at Frankfurt. There was only one between 900 and 1,000. It was an AM, and I believe Super hit just over 1,000 GPM on his Alchemist in one game. But those are the only two matches over 900. So again, I'm going to go with 900 to 999 mostly because I believe there's going to be a lot of high-level anti-mage play in this tournament, and I think you're just going to see one game where CTY, RTZ, or Miracle cracks 900 on that particular hero, and that's going to be your record right there.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more conservative. I think that like with longer games, the GPMs do get high, but they reach a plateau and they drop down from there.
Especially in the last couple of patches. Yeah, that's another thing to talk about is that just because the creep gold got nerfed and death timers are become a huge factor. GPMs don't necessarily are actually not necessarily highest in these super long games, but that's why I think a Tiny could step up too and hit that 900. I don't think we're gonna see a lot of Alchemist in this tournament. I really don't.
No, maybe Vici pick it once or twice for super, something like that.
Fair enough. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of covering all the categories. Any closing thoughts for us, my man?
No, I just wanted to point out one thing, if that's okay. Because you're going to link the Shanghai stats page simulation. The reason that VP has got a very, very low number of unique picks and average bans, I just wanted to remind and point out, is that they have very, very few official games this patch.
Yep.
And as a result, if you take their pick and ban distributions and you extrapolate it over like a large period, it remains like there's only like 10 heroes or something that they've picked this patch.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's
there's not a huge sample to it.
In fairness to you, I thought about showing those numbers in this video and giving people a little bit more thorough walkthrough of how we did that simulation, but I thought people would enjoy the back and forth between us on the categories and the heroes a little bit more. But those numbers are there, and I'm happy to talk with people. If people have questions, feel free to leave comments. Both Nox and I here and on Reddit, both Nox and I like to talk to people about stats. But anyway, I think that's it. I am going to try to release my remaining team previews over the next 48 to 72 hours, although my real life schedule has just blown up in my face, but that's life. But thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Nox, thanks for coming on. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. And
don't forget, guys, to fill in your predictions quick.
All right.
You've only got a day and a half left.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Reminder. All right. See you guys.